in the book of Mark, chapter 4. Mark chapter 4. Amen. Mark chapter 4. We're going to be concluding our series called Life Unexpected. Life Unexpected. Mark chapter 4, in verse 35. It reads, "As evening came, Jesus said to his disciples, 'Let's cross to the other side of the lake.' So they took Jesus in the boat and started out, leaving crowds behind, although other boats followed. But soon a fierce, unexpected storm came up. High waves were breaking into the boat, and it began to fill with water. Jesus was sleeping at the back of the boat with his head on a cushion. The disciples woke him up shouting, 'Teacher, don't you care that we're going to drown?' When Jesus woke up, he rebuked the wind and said to the waves, 'Silence,' or in the King James Version, 'Peace, be still.' And suddenly," someone say or type in suddenly. Suddenly, the wind stopped and there was a great calm. Then he asked them, 'Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith?' The disciples were absolutely terrified. 'Who is this man?' they asked each other. 'Even the wind and waves obey him.'" Heavenly Father, as we spend our moments here together, I'm asking you to anoint this time, that when we face the storms of life, that when we find ourselves in unexpected situations, may we turn to you. And may you be the one to calm the storm of our heart and our life. It's in Jesus' name. Everyone says, amen. I want you all to back up to verse 33 of Mark chapter 4. Let's back up to verse 33. And a very interesting point that we see in this story. So prior to Jesus saying, "I want you all to walk to the other side," Jesus actually taught an entire seminar on faith. And so the ones who were closest to him now had to live out the very words that he had been sharing. And in Mark 4 and 33, it says, "Jesus used many similar stories and illustrations to teach the people as much as they could understand." Verse 34, "In fact, in his public ministry, he never taught without using parables. But afterwards, when he was alone with his disciples, he explained everything to them." So this is the philosophy of Christ, is that he is going to reach you in a way that gets your attention. I want you to understand that God does not send the storm, but he uses the storm to reinforce and anchor you to his word. So there won't be a wasted moment. There won't be a wasted trial. There won't be a wasted situation, a wasted opportunity, an unexpected turn of events that God will not use so that you could, for yourself, see the true character and nature of God. So let's add some context to Mark chapter 4, starting at verse 35. I want you to understand the Sea of Galilee. The sea or the Lake of Galilee was notorious for its storms. So it was known to have storms. And these weren't storms that you could predict. They literally came out of the blue and with shattering and terrifying suddenness. And I don't know if you all have lived life long enough where it's like you're minding your own business. You've got your goals, you've got your plans set, and all of a sudden it seems like things are completely upended. It seems like all of your plans are completely out of the window. And there's this mindset that from the Old Testament where it says the curse causeless doesn't come. So it's been taught at times that there are certain storms in your life because you haven't been obeying the word of God. or there's a level of sin somewhere in your life, or there is a level of disobedience somewhere in your life. And although that is not incorrect, it is incomplete. Because we see in Mark chapter 4 and verse 35, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let us cross on the other side of the lake." So they obeyed instantaneously and crossed on the other side of the lake. But in their obedience, they encountered a storm. And the way that Jesus asked them to cross the lake, typically the disciples were ones to, because of the nature of this lake, they didn't venture out too deep because of the unpredictability. And I just want to talk to somebody who has a heart to truly follow and obey God with everything that's within you. Sometimes we hold at bay. Sometimes we only give God just enough to work with that we can control the outcome. And it's like the more you trust God, the more he builds your faith, the more he builds your confidence, the more he invites you to take steps of faith and to walk forward in everything that he's called you to do. But in the midst of him doing everything, of you doing everything that he's called you to do, there will sometimes be storms that arise. There sometimes will be terror that shows up. There will sometimes be things that you would think, why in the world am I out here? But it's when we're far away from our comfort zone that we begin to experience the character of God for ourselves. Amen. And so when Jesus says in verse 40 or verse 39, silence or peace be still. In the Greek, it actually says, be still and stay still. Be still and stay still. And so it begs the question, was Jesus only speaking to the wind and the waves, or was he also speaking to their hearts as well? Come on now. Sometimes the storm in our life is one thing, but our reaction to the storms in our life are a completely different thing. Sometimes based off of the condition of our heart, sometimes based off of the condition of our soul, and having gone through a level of stress, having gone through a level of trials, when we experience the storms of life, sometimes God has to calm down the reaction within us. Sometimes God has to calm down the responses within us. And I want to introduce to us a posture that Christ possessed, that in the midst of the storm, he asked them to take that next step. He asked them to go to the other side. He was a part of that storm, but was Jesus bothered? He was unbothered. He was asleep in the back of the boat. And so here's the ultimate goal when you face something that's unexpected. The proof of your faith is demonstrated in your peace through the storm. The proof of your faith is demonstrated through the peace in the storm. How peaceful are you when you have no reason to be at peace? How calm are you when everything in your mind says, now is the time to bug out and overreact? So there has to be a level, a standard that we live by, and our standard is always Jesus. But what I love about this story is that we not only see the standard being Christ, but we see the real reaction being the disciples. Come on now, when we face tests and we face trials, my first response is not, oh God, I trust you. Oh God, I believe what your word says concerning me. Oh, I know we're gonna make it out A-okay, especially when the test and trial comes out of nowhere. My response is a lot like the disciples' response. Lord, don't you care that I'm going through what I'm going through? And I want to introduce an idea to you. So, man, in a culture based off of convenience, when things get uncomfortable, there's a temptation to believe that God is not good. And I want us, and I had a great question that came into our church this weekend through our our office line, and the question was, what is our stance on the sovereignty of God? Like what is our stance? Because there's this idea, there's two extremes. One extreme says that God will kill you if you don't do what's right. That's one extreme. The other extreme says that because God is good, he won't allow bad to come in your life. Those are two extremes. Through context of Scripture and through life application, I found that God is in the balance. God will at times permit hurt to come into your life, but God will never do harm to you. You know, I as a, when you're the pastor, the lead pastor of a church that you started, you are in essence the boss, and you pretty much choose a lot. Like, you have a lot of freedom, a lot of autonomy. Any like solo entrepreneurs out there, you are the one who runs your schedule. But also built into my life, I'm an employee for a larger institution. And I think it's good because when you have a lot of freedom, you don't realize how many adjustments you make that work for you until you have a contract with someone else who might be a little more strict than you are, and it feels like a restriction when all it is discipline. It's good, especially entrepreneurs. You should find a way, if you don't have that opportunity to get a contract with someone who has strong discipline, strong structure, then entrepreneurs should find a way to serve someone, something else that requires you to be somewhere at a certain time, do things a certain way, because all of us have an area of pride that needs to be checked every single day. Pride is like bad breath. You might not know it, but it's there. So what we have to understand with God is that sometimes in the areas that you're giving him the most grief in is the areas of rebellion you've been the most disobedient in. Sometimes when things happen unexpected, we have to ask ourselves, how much of that situation were we trying to control in the first place? And how much of it was it not our place to control to begin with? And so here are some habits for a healthy heart. I'm calling this a spiritual stress test. And this test is to examine, under the normal pressures and rigors of life, are there any blockages, and is life flowing through your heart, your spirit, your soul unhindered? When you get pressure applied to your relationships, when you get pressure applied to your life, when you get pressure applied to your finances, you get pressure applied at anywhere in life, you find out what you really have. And so when pressure hits our life, let's go to Acts chapter 24 and 16, and I want to read this from the New King James Version. Here is the daily spiritual stress test that I want all of us to put ourselves through. In Acts 24:16 in the New King James Version, it says, this being so, I myself always strive. In the King James, I like it even better where it says, herein do I exercise myself. Here's the exercise. Here is the test. Now, let me tell you something about exercise. You can put your own self through a workout, or you could have someone who is specialized in a workout put you through a workout. When you put yourself initially through a workout, you're going to say, that's enough. We done good. We showed up today. Ain't God good? Ain't God good? But when someone is specialized in working you out, they're going to push you beyond what you think your physical limitations are. In fact, there are times when you're working out that you're wondering, can my heart beat any faster, or is this the end? So what the writer in Acts 24:16 is saying, here is how we exercise. Here is the ultimate workout plan for your soul. To have a conscience, have a heart without offense toward God and man. Ooh, boy. You mean to tell me? Yes, absolutely. Here is your goal. To live free of offense, whether it's toward God or whether it's toward people. Because offense will take place either toward God or toward people. Because offense is as natural as the corrosion I talked about last week on the battery. It's a part of the wear and tear of life. You will be offended. Someone say and type in, I will be offended. It's okay to say it. It doesn't make you any less of a Christian to say that I will be offended. You will be offended, okay? And it's no point of denying. We'll get to this hopefully by the end of today's message. It is no point denying when you are offended. In fact, the quicker you realize you're offended, the healthier you are. But before we close out this series, we had 2 weeks to really build up your hearts, but I want to challenge you today. I want to challenge you to be grown in your responses. I want to challenge you not to be so petty publicly. It's okay to have a petty private moment. One of my nicknames is Pastor Petty. He is down in there and ready to go. I know Pastor Petty is ready to go. In fact, I could give Pastor Petty a scheduled opportunity to make an appearance, and it would be all bad for a whole lot of folk. I don't let Pastor Petty speak because Pastor Petty don't have no filter. And listen, words are like rain. Once they're out there, you cannot take them back. So you know when you're about to be petty. You know it. So avoid it at all costs. But fear is the ultimate root of all offense. So before you respond in offense, the better question is, what am I afraid of? Psalm 34:4. So when I realize that I'm offended and fear is the root of all offense, then Psalm 34:4 says, I prayed to the Lord and he answered me and he freed me from all my fears. Amen. That is such a powerful, powerful statement that if fear is the root of all offense, when I feel myself being offended, my first step should be to go to the Lord. And he'll free me from all of our fears. All right, I told y'all what God does. Let me show you how he does it. Go to 1 John chapter 4. 1 John chapter 4 and verse 16. So fear is the root of all offense. And this is why, so all of these spiritual disciplines work together to make you a complete person in the image and likeness of Christ. A good Bible teaching will have principles that interlock with each other. So it's like you're building your own pattern. You're building habits. You're able to handle situations better than you did before. Now, that doesn't mean that when you grow that you won't have times where you take 2 steps forward and you take 4 steps, 10 steps backwards. It doesn't mean that. What it does mean is that when you do have one of those moments where you come completely out of character, I know y'all don't have that. That it doesn't take you longer to make things right. So let's just say we come out of character. How quick are we to restore that moment in that situation? Amen. 1 John chapter 4. So let's examine this. So if God delivers us from all of our fears, 1 John 4 and 16 says, we know how much God loves us, and we put our trust in whose love? We put our trust in God's love. We do not put our need to be accepted, our need to be validated, our need to be affirmed in anyone but God. Not our parents, not our spouse, not our job, not our friends, no one. Because every time you put the pressure on someone else to give you your basic need of acceptance, of validation, of respect, of worthiness, you always set yourself up to go lacking. I'm going to show you what happens when we go lacking. It says, God is love, and all who live in love live in God, and God lives in them. And as we live in God, our love grows more perfect. The word perfect there does not mean flawless. It means mature. So you really want to develop in love? Live like God lives. The phrase, what would Jesus do? Is legitimate. Because in every situation, you have to ask yourself, how would Christ respond in this? And it doesn't always feel good. It doesn't. It says, so we will not be afraid on the day of judgment, but we can face him with confidence because we live like Jesus here in this world. Verse 18, such love, God's love, has no fear because perfect love expels all fear. The phrase perfect love expels all fear means because you know how much you're loved, you have no reason to fear. And so anytime there is a perceived lack of love or a perceived need that has gone unmet, here comes fear. And fear is the root of all what? Offense. And every day we're going to exercise our conscience to be free of what? Offense toward who? And who? Good class. Good class. So if our exercise every day is to work on this heart, keep this heart free from accepting the offense, because the offense will come and knock on the door. And the more mature you are, the more you can see it coming. And you got to ask yourself, either you're going to let it pass or you're going to be saying, I got time today. Play with it. You got to know. You got to know you, and you got to be honest with where you are. And some conversations don't need to be had until you calm down. Sometimes instead of posting, you need a journal and write it out in your journal or write it out in your notepad or completely type it out on social media and delete it before you post it. Get it out. But if you accept it and you internalize it, you make the attack personal. And I dare to say the majority of attacks that you experience from others are from their patterns, not toward you personally. But if you allow your mind to tell you that what they did was personal instead of their pattern, then you'll end up holding on to offense that your heart was not designed to carry. And the more offense you hold in your heart toward God or man creates a blockage, so the life and the love of God cannot flow through you. You show me a person who has a hard time forgiving, I'll show you a person who doesn't know how much God has forgiven them. And they don't believe it. But if you show me a person who understands how much God has forgiven, how much God has accepted, I will also show you a person who operates in a strong sense of forgiving others. Now, forgiveness does not always mean reconciliation. Sometimes I can forgive you, and because I love you, I'm not going to fool with you. But I'm not holding that in my heart. What happens when we hold on to offense or when we don't know how much we're loved in a situation and we're offended? It says if we're afraid, it is for the fear of punishment or the fear of missing out, or I'm going to be missing something. I'm not going to have something. And this shows that we have not fully experienced God's perfect love, because we can love each other because God first loved us. And so according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, this is where things happen. You have physiological needs, the basic needs of food and clothing. When you feel like someone is not allowing you the opportunity or access to these basic needs, fear is present. There are then needs of safety, which concern your job and your security. There are needs of love and belonging, friendship, relationship, love. There are needs of esteem. And anytime I perceive that these needs are going unmet, I will be offended. In any of my relationships, whether it's to God, because the one we don't like talking about is when we're mad at God. When we're frustrated with where we are in our life at the moment, because I've been there, where I am frustrated with God, why am I in this season of my life right now, and I am mad at you? You could tell God you're mad at him? Well, you should. He's a big boy. He can handle it. And he will give you his perspective on the matter. And you'll realize that in the areas that you're mad at him, you've stopped listening to his wisdom on how to get out of the very situation you're in. Often, we don't like what God is saying about how to move forward, because in our mind, we had a plan on how things were going to happen. But God is not a respecter of persons. He is not going to bless someone over here and just willingly keep you neglected over here. Just like the disciples found themselves in the middle of a storm, you are going to find yourself in life in the middle of storms. There will be storms, yes, that we can sometimes cause, but there are other times that there are storms that you had nothing to do with. The key is not to get so offended with God that you stay stuck in a stormy season. But you have to say, listen, this is not going the way in which I thought. But you know what, God? I might have heard news I didn't want to hear, but I trust your love to get me out of this. When it comes in our relationships, for different relationships, whether knowingly or unknowingly, we have expectations on others to live up to a certain standard that they may not even know or they may not be able to live up to. We see a lot of this in the church circles. Like, y'all, I'm amazed at how many people are mad at me and I don't even know them. It's amazing. Like, you could be minding your own business, loving people the best way you know how. Then somebody want to sit down with you and talk about all the stuff you didn't do for them. And as a pastor, Pastor Petty, he wants to say, I ain't even thinking about you. But the pastor side of me understands that often people project what they didn't have on the person that they can see. And so sometimes in church, as pastors, we pay for the pastor you used to have 20 years ago. But since you didn't want to sit down with him and tell him how you were feeling, you decide, I'm offended, I'm leaving. And you come and sit with me thinking, I'm going to talk to my pastor. It's this one. I'm going to talk to him and tell him everything I don't like about this church. I don't like the pews. I don't like what y'all sang. I don't like, and listen, I ain't got pews. We're not singing the same songs, but you feel justified because you have not dealt with what's in your heart. I tell any person, and I'm going to be real honest with you. Don't join my church offended with your last church. Because I don't need them problems. Listen, I don't need them problems. I need to be a place, and this needs to be a place where I might have had a bad experience, but I'm giving this a clean slate, and I'm going to draw my own conclusions from my own experiences. Because what happens is people go from location to location to location, never dealing with what's going on within. That doesn't happen just in church. Happens in marriage, relationships. You broke up with a very tough, it was a tough breakup. Y'all were committed. Y'all loved each other. And you've been single now for 6 months, and I feel better, and I'm back, and it's time for me to go back dating. Well, how do you know you're not going to repeat the same cycle? I'm a different person. I got all new energy around me. But you have no structure to condition your heart. So now you're in this new relationship and it's starting to feel like the old relationship, where the only thing that's the same from the old relationship is you. Or I'm gonna leave this job because they're not treating me right. They don't respect me and my gifting and my anointing and my calling. And I don't deserve to be treated like this. My question to you is, do they have that direct deposit account number right? And is your name right on your W-2 or your 1099? Then that's the only thing you need to expect out of your job. You ain't there to make friends. You're there to be a friend, not make them. All of your hopes, dreams, aspirations, need for affirmation, acceptance, validation, your employer was not built for that. So we have to take into consideration, who have I been putting unnecessary stress on to fulfill something that only God could fulfill in my life? And when I realized that, man, maybe I put too much of an expectation on someone, then I realized that I can start accepting my role in the engagement, my role in the relationship. They didn't pay me like they should have. Did you have a contract? And was it signed and agreed upon and all the terms executed before you entered that business agreement? Well, no, I thought because we had a relationship. Listen, the Bible says in business, be men or be grown. Separate that whole relationship thing to solid business principles. And if they did not honor your legal binding document, then they have legal entities to deal with that. But that doesn't mean you walk around and harbor all this animosity. In your marriage, did you specifically communicate your expectations? And did the other person repeat back to you what you said your expectations were? And did you all have an agreement when you left the table? More times than not, nope. Not at all. I thought you should just know what I want. You know my past, you know my history. But nobody can read your mind. And so if we're not humble enough to say, if you could help me with this need, there are certain seasons I need more from my wife and vice versa. But I have to be humble enough to communicate, hey, in this season, can I get some help with this? And guess what? There will be days where she helps, and there will be days where she won't. But at the end of the day, whose responsibility is it to get what they need? Mine with God. Amen. All right. So fear corrodes away at the ability for us to operate in a healthy manner. Your fear may have its reasons, but your fear is never rational. You may have a reason that you're afraid, but when you actually line it up, there is no solid rationale behind it. Case in point, let me talk about afraid that God is not going to come through. Over the course of your life, has God been faithful to you? Now, in times, it hadn't come in the moments in the ways that you wanted, but has he been faithful to you? So when we get afraid that God is not going to continue being faithful, we have a reason because we don't know how, but the rationale doesn't line up because his character has shown him to be consistent. So when offense arises, we need to own up to our responses. Luke chapter 17. Let's go here as we land the plane. I do apologize. No, I don't apologize. But I know that this is a little tough this morning. But I believe that y'all can take it. Amen. Somebody got to talk to you a little crazy every now and then. And I want to be that one. Luke 17:1. And this is Jesus in the New King James Version saying, then he said to his disciples, it is impossible that no offenses should come. But woe to him or them through whom they do come. Verse 3. Take heed to who? Let's read this again. Take heed to who? You. So many different ways I want to go right now. Do you realize that when you actually pay attention to what's going on in your life, you do not have enough time to criticize what someone else is doing? When I'm paying attention to the ways that I need to improve in my household, I don't have enough time to criticize my wife for what she's not doing. That makes sense. You realize all the promises that you made and didn't necessarily come through on. All the grace that you need extended to you on a consistent basis. So when you find yourself offended, we need to take heed to ourselves. And so how can we do that? Number one, through confession. We need to create room for honest confession and dialogue. Every person needs an outlet. Every one of us need a safe space that we can have trust and we can have safety to be honest with how we're feeling. 1 John chapter 1, verse 7 through 9. You all can write that down. We're not going to turn there for the sake of time. 1 John chapter 1, 7 through 9. Often church uses it to talk about if you sin, confess, and God will forgive you from all your unrighteousness. The context of that was not talking about when you make a mistake, ask God to forgive you. I'll talk about this in the next coming weeks. But on the cross, Jesus died for how many of your sins? All of them. So if he died for all of your sins and he paid for them, are you asking him to forgive you of what he's already done? No, you're not. 1 John 1, 7 through 9 in context is talking about living a life of self-awareness. It means becoming aware to what's going on within you. So when you make a mistake, become aware that I'm human and I need to receive forgiveness. Verse 8 deals with the type of person who feel like they can't do nothing wrong. So you always perfect. You always right. He said you lie and the truth is not in you. Every person needs room for honest confession and dialogue. Every person needs an outlet. Go to James chapter 5 and verse 16. But now there's a different word, confess, because in 1 John 1:9, the word confess means to acknowledge the covenant that God has done. So that is with us and God, acknowledging that covenant. James 5:16 says, confess your sins to each other. In the Amplified, it says, and also your missteps. So have a place for you to verbalize areas that you need to come up in. Sometimes we need to vent. Sometimes you've got to get that out of your head and either on paper or in a safe space where it's not festering within you. He says, the way you know the right place is that then the earnest prayer of a righteous person. Listen, when you're going through something, you need somebody that's going to listen and say, now how can we be praying together about this? Not, child, listen, let me tell you what I would have did. And we're going back and rehearsing it over and over and over and over and again. Confession is the light that exposes our secrets and frees the heart from the oppressive power of guilt. The fewer the secrets, the stronger the relationship. For us today, we need to evaluate, does God know how you're really feeling? Being honest. Does he know how you're really feeling? Can I give y'all one more? I was going to end it, but I'm going to give y'all one more. So I said first habit is confession. Second habit, forgiveness. We got to forgive some folks. Forgiveness, what forgiveness is the ability to cultivate a heart strong enough to heal, yet soft enough to forgive. Forgiveness is strength. Forgiveness is power. And as long as you're holding on to what someone else has done to you, you're holding relational debt. And you cannot have healthy relationships with relational debt within. Hurt, offense, pain will come, as Jesus said in Luke 17. Let's go to Luke 17. This is not in my notes, but God is asking me to share this before we close this series. And I do not want to be disobedient. Oh boy, Luke 17. Verse 4, when it's talking about forgiving someone. Or actually, verse 3, he says, so take heed to yourself. If another believer sins, rebuke that person. That means find a space to speak the truth in love. Don't be, I'm called to correct and to bring judgment unto thine household right now. Have some tact. Hey, it's especially if the person knows. Like, there are some people who have made you upset. They don't even know you. So you to walk up to, hey, hi, my name is Vince. And you don't know me. I know you from afar, but what you really did, it upset me. Now that creates more offense. But if there's a relationship in play and that person has done something and it has offended you and you believe that it was egregious, you go to that individual speaking the truth in love. But you say, hey, listen, it could just be me. So you don't say, I just want to tell you about yourself. Now you got a wall. Now they're being defensive because they feel like their need for safety is being attacked. But you could say, listen, and I could be wrong in this, but the other day when you said and you talked about, for me, it was just tough to me. Now, if the person has any gumption of emotional intelligence, they will say, if they truly weren't intending it, hey, so sorry that what I said did that to you. That was not my intent. Here's my intent. And now we've restored a relationship. We've been grown. We sometimes run and break these, relational bonds too fast because we don't want to face the conflict of, you did me wrong, and I feel this is just what I'm feeling. And I could be wrong in this, but when you did X, Y, and Z, it made me feel. And I don't know if that was your intent. The response that you're not trying to hear, and this lets you know where a person is, well, you need to toughen up. Because I ain't mean it. I ain't mean that. That's not helping the situation. If we're truly interested in making the relationship go further, if you didn't mean it, be humble enough to say, I did not mean that. And so, charge it to my head, not my heart. So what can we do going forward? And it says, so how often should I go to someone in a day for doing something that upsets me? Jesus responded. And he said, even if that person wrongs you 7 times a day, each time turns again and they ask for forgiveness. My bad. In the words of George W. Bush, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, better not fool me again. He said 7 times. They said, my bad, in a day. Oh, yeah, I felt that. I felt that right in the Holy Ghost. Because your ability to forgive is connected to your ability to believe God in faith. Because by faith, I'm releasing this debt. Because I don't know if you're going to do it again or not. So that's why he goes and he has so many scriptures on forgive before you pray, because your inability to forgive will show you your inability to believe God for what it is you're praying for. So the test of all this stuff we believe is in our human relationships. I know. Y'all pulled it out. I was going to go home. I wasn't even going to talk about it. But to me, whether here or at home, some of y'all's hearts have been so blocked with unforgiveness. It is time to make the decision of faith to let it go. Your feelings will catch up some years from now. Sometimes it takes years to recover from the wounds of relationships. But your feelings don't dictate your faith to forgive. And what you'll notice is that people who operate in a sense of forgiveness have a level of joy, have a level of life, but you'll also know people who cannot forgive are very toxic and filled with drama. You show me a drama-filled environment, I'll show you somebody and I'll show you an environment that doesn't believe in the grace of God. So here at the outlet, let me go home. I want to be back next week. I don't need y'all calling the board to vote me out. Let's choose to be people of faith. And let's operate where we're not going to hold on to offense. Whether it be toward God, we're going to own up to it, or whether it's toward individuals. I'm going to warn you, though, based off of you hearing this message, it won't even be before you leave the parking lot or before you close your iPad, your laptop, or whatever. You are going to have an experience to choose to either accept offense or reject it. In the car on the way home, husbands and wives, don't say nothing, just quiet. Because you're going to have a chance. Parents, children, everybody, you're going to have a chance. Amen. Amen. Let's stand to our feet today, y'all. That's enough. That's enough. Amen. I wrote this in my notes 2 weeks ago, that this altar call would happen the way it was. So if you're listening to me right now, the Lord 2 weeks ago knew you were going to be here today. And he wants us all in this altar call to examine our hearts right now. I'm not saying, and listen, I want you to hear me. I'm not saying that you have to rekindle a relationship that you've moved away from. I'm not saying that you have to be all kiki and ha-ha and buddy-buddy. I'm not saying any of that right now. What I'm saying is, I want you to make a faith move and say, by faith, I'm releasing this person's debt of apology. They don't owe me an apology. I'm going to release that debt. Some of my largest financial blessings have been tied to my ability to forgive those who have wronged me grievously. Never understood the correlation between finances and forgiveness. It's all about faith. It's all about the heart. And your unforgiveness is stopping and stunting your income potential. So today I'm asking you to get out of your way. They are not worth your future. When you feel, how do you know you're offended? When you repeat the story, you have the same emotion. When it happened back in high school in '87. How do you know you're healed? You repeat the story. Less and less emotion comes with it. holding on to unforgiveness will always keep you looking at yourself as the victim of your circumstances. I want you to take ownership. Say, greater is he who lives in me. And because he lives and he loves me, I can love others that very same way. Amen. So what we're going to do right now in this altar call, I want you to close your eyes and examine your heart. If there's anyone who has wronged you, if there's anyone that has completely offended you, you're holding on to, I will never let go of what they did, how they embarrassed me, how they hurt me. Let's take that first step. Whether it's on a sheet of paper, whether it's on your phone, I want you to write that person, that organization, or the situation that you're even mad at God about. I want you to write it out right now. Type it out. And as you have those things, people, relationships, in your heart, in your mind, I want us to lay them on the altar today. Say, God, I'm taking my hand off of you handling this situation. I'm putting this into your hand to handle. Because I trust that your will be done. And I'm putting my heart, God, into your hands to trust you. So let's pray today. Lord, we thank you for your love, for your kindness that you've shown to us throughout our life. Father, for every person who's taken a bold step to say, I choose to forgive and no longer walk in offense, by faith, Lord, they're releasing that weight. They're releasing that debt. They're releasing that burden to you. We lay it on the altar at your feet. And we focus on your love to restore. We focus on your love to heal. We focus on your love to set free, so that we can be a testament of your long suffering. We can be a testament of your grace. It's in Jesus' name.